Okay, guys, we are back with Maynard. We are talking StarCraft and the life of a caster and commentator. We dived into many topics. We were talking about how many events did you do, and I would like to continue our conversation and ask you about the next event you are going. Where are you going next? Where can we catch you?
Well, I just did Shanghai, and my next event's not been announced yet.
Okay.
But I am lined up for another job.
Okay, so pretty soon we will be able to see you again in action.
Yes, you'll see me soon.
Great. Looking forward. Um, One thing that I still wanted to ask you about is the C community. So you are obviously from Australia, and you started out as a very active member of the C community.
Hmm.
Um, the community itself seems to me like a very special one. So with a very own character. I mean, you guys are, for me at least, being from Europe, never really on the map. But
Yeah,
somehow,
no, it's
yeah, because you are also really far away from everything geographically.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. No, that's the thing. Like geography is a big reason. It's quite laggy for us to play against internationals from home.
exactly.
Southeast Asia is also not just Australia. It also includes like Singapore and that sort of area, Philippines and
Exactly.
New Zealand
Mm.
as well. So like we have a Blizzard office in Sydney which covers Australia and New Zealand,
Okay.
and they've been actually sort of picking up the slack where Southeast Asia Blizzard kind of doesn't really do much for us anymore. It's all
Mm.
about Blizzard Australia, New Zealand. Their office is in Sydney. They and ESL Australia have been putting on events very recently for Challenger and that sort of thing for WCS circuit. So we actually have we never used to have it, but we actually have a fully fledged live show, stage, desk, audience, everything, and it's really really cool because we haven't had anything like that for a really long time. So it's good to have it again. We used to have a tournament circuit called ACL, the Australian Cyber League,
Mm.
and funnily enough, the people that ran ACL are now actually in charge of ESL Australia. So they're a lot of good workers, and they basically ran the consistent live event for StarCraft 2, like the LAN for StarCraft 2. They had 3 events a year, give or
Mm.
take, and and then ESL Australia now we have Challenger for every season of WCS,
Mhm.
which used to just be me and a couple other friends on a desk casting an online tournament.
Mhm.
But the last one for Valencia and this season for Montreal, it's a full stage, full production affair, and
Nice.
it's really cool to have that again because it feels like 2012 all over again, like when we
Mm.
had our big stage show and seeing all these familiar faces and and Australian StarCraft fans and that sort of thing. It's like like one big family.
So you would say the state of the community is good and still alive and kicking.
It's small, but it lives. It's
Yes.
small, but it lives. It's not incredibly insular. If people want to be a part of it, they can be, as long as they're not dicks.
Mm.
People are, there's a lot of history here. A lot of people have, been enemies, been friends, been teammates, been opponents, been rivals.
Mhm.
There's so much history and storylines here in Australia.
Yeah, it's
Um,
and
but it's something that only we get to enjoy. The rest of the world really doesn't get to enjoy it.
that's the
Um,
thing. Yes, and I mean that's what I find so sad a bit. It's a bit sad, not sad, but like players like Probe, for example, that casted now
mhm.
at Home Story Cup all alone on the B stream like for hours.
Yeah, yeah.
Poor guy, man.
Uh,
Um,
he's
yeah.
he appeared out of, like, as far as the rest of the world's concerned, he appeared out of nowhere. And for us, we got to see Probe slowly rise to the level that he is, and now Probe is
Mm.
as of this moment on the 7th of August at 6:30 p.m. here in Central Australian time. He is the best player in Australia. So
And
that the best player in Australia does change, but it's been Probe very recently for a while here. So
exactly.
yeah,
And I mean that's
and
that's a bit yeah. Yeah.
oh,
Uh,
no,
it's just
I'm
that, yeah,
rambling.
exactly. So that type of players you have that type of players that you have the storylines, you have that all of that, and it's so difficult to transport that to the rest of the world. But on the other side, um, I find it so nice to discover something like that as a foreigner, as an outsider. Um, when I did
Mm.
some research on your history start with StarCraft, I realized how immensely active the scene was since the beginning,
Mm.
in a very, very good way and very positive way, for me at least. Um, and I think for me that's, yeah, very motivating to see that even though if you look from Europe, you guys are on the end of the world. For me, um, it doesn't actually matter because you still can get something going, and if you are passionate about the game, yeah. So
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it.
Mhm. Yeah.
I was going to say a lot of it is thanks to Blizzard and recent sponsors. Like actually, McDonald's Australia is sponsoring this tournament as well. Like, so it's a pretty big sponsor.
Okay.
But the cool thing is that these days in 2017, internationals actually can watch our scene and get on board, and people like myself, Zeph and Death or whoever I usually cast with will give you the storylines leading up to that moment for the most part. No, we won't give you the full story, but we'll give you like a concise version of what a certain matchup will mean. Like I think it's important for storylines as a commentator to tell people what they're watching when they're watching from home. Like someone, some people will say, oh, we don't have new StarCraft fans, and I completely disagree. I think there's a new StarCraft fan every day, but you need to, when they jump into a Twitch stream, and they're like, hey, why should I be here? Why should I continue to watch this? Giving them a storyline is really, really important. And what is more important to me than the local scene is not much. So the success of the game as a whole, I suppose, is more important. But it's only really been this year where we've started to sort of have a lot more money put into our scene, because for a few years we kind of got the raw end of the deal. We were on Twitch streams that didn't have many followers. They would make a fresh new Twitch for just our tournament. So we weren't on ESL StarCraft 2, which has a ton of followers, and we went on Twitch TV StarCraft, which also, again, a lot of followers. The channels were fresh, they were new, they were only promoted by the people that were running those tournaments. So, whether myself or Moonglade, like maybe Moonglade's part of that tournament, he's casting it, he's got 10,000 followers, that's the extent of our reach. And we're on Team Liquid, but usually we're clashing with something else. Whereas this time, because it's a WCS Challenger thing, they're really making sure that we don't clash with other things. So then we clashed with the NA a little bit a couple seasons ago, but we didn't this time. We had our own time block. We were on Twitch TV StarCraft. We were very heavily promoted. The event was in the launcher, and the Blizzard have really finally started to give our region the spotlight, which is great.
Absolutely.
That's the situation right now. So
Yeah,
it's a good
nice.
place to be.
I'm very happy to hear that. You mentioned Moonglade. Now I'm curious. Is he still around with you guys?
He cast the last event, the last Challenger event with me. Yeah,
Okay,
with
nice.
me and Death and Zeph. Yeah. So
Cool.
the four commentators, one of them was Moonglade.
Yeah, he was actually one of the first StarCraft 2 players that I saw live in Germany, in Hanover.
Oh, cool.
So that was quite exciting for me. He was playing against Squirtle and all these guys. So like the old days.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
You mentioned one thing, and that's more as as a professional. I myself, I'm a reverend. I'm a pastor. I work in a church
Oh,
and everything.
cool.
Yeah. So,
Oh, wow.
so
I apologize. I apologize for swearing then.
No, man, it's fine. I swear myself. It's totally fine.
Okay, good.
We are all
Because
grown
as an
ups here.
Australian, it's hard to dial that down. Yeah, we're all grown ups. Let's say that.
Later, I still have to call a friend of mine. She's living in Perth at the moment. Yeah, she has a birthday.
Oh, there you go.
And so I know the Australians. You have your own style. So
We do, yeah.
so what in my line of work, I obviously also talk in public, and obviously not that long time that you are. Let's say you cast for 4 or 5 hours, 6 hours, if it's a big event. How much training do you got?
If it's
come again? Yeah.
I was going to say 6 is a pretty easy day. It's very rare we'll get a 6-hour day. A lot of the like IEM Shanghai, most of those days were more like 12. WCS is more like 12. But I mean, we do get breaks, so it's not like it's the whole time. But anyway, go on.
So the technical side of it. So how do you approach it there? I'm talking now if you have to talk so much, not only to stay obviously focused, that's the one, and stay excited for the
Hmm.
viewers. How do you handle it technically? Do you have any sort of training, or do you just go with it?
Well, I mean, not. I haven't done any training myself. I know some people have. I think Tasteless has had some proper voice training. I haven't. Um, I mean, even when I was a singer in a band, it was very. My singing style was very suicidal. I didn't do it thinking about the longevity of my voice. I did it. I did it to sound as raw and primal as possible, as well as switch from that into clean vocals. So I smoked for 15 years. I've quit now, but I smoked for 15 years. Drank a lot of whiskey. I still drink. Sorry, Pastor. But
That's fine.
those sort of things gave me that kind of a deep, natural, like deepish voice, which I never used to have when I was younger, obviously. But it also kind of gave my throat a lot of like endurance. Like I can cast all day, no problem. I can scream at those incredibly high volumes and do it several best of fives in a row or in a best of seven, and still be okay at the end of the day. Like I lost my voice after Shanghai, but that's because I went a little bit too hard in the grand final. I don't usually get to cast grand final, so I wanted to really make it count. It's really just the only thing I could say is that for me, it's just experience. Having cast so much, I know when to back off, when to, how often to be loud and excited. Like back in the day, I used to just be loud and excited about everything, and then I picked my battles. You know what I mean? Like I'm like, okay, this probably doesn't need that. Save that for something that actually matters a lot more, and then dial it back. Give yourself a little bit of endurance, and that is just experience. It's not something that you can. A trainer is not going to be able to tell you that. I mean, I would tell if there's a play-by-play commentator that wants to, a high energy commentator that wants to, be an up and coming Maynarde or an up and coming Tasteless or whatever. I would be happy to tell them a few things about how to maintain your levels without destroying yourself. But most people that are coming into StarCraft 2 these days as commentators are on the analytical side, minus, I would say, Fear Dragon, who's, what Fear Dragon brings is an insane amount of research, where he has a ton of player knowledge. Like, he has so much player knowledge, but it's not, he doesn't necessarily have a ton of game knowledge. What he has is excitement and passion for the game and a ton of player knowledge. And he brings those together to have a pretty tidy package of a caster, which is good. I myself, I have some game knowledge and some player knowledge and an intense amount of passion. But I make sure that whatever tournament I go to, I prep like crazy. I make sure I know everything about every player that goes there and how they got there. Because like I mentioned a little bit ago, it's important to have storylines.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I mean the storylines. For that obviously you have some background, and you have to have some background. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks so much. Yeah,
Absolutely.
I was just curious about that side of the work. So just to wrap things up a bit. We touched on so many topics today that are all big and interesting. You also mentioned that you followed other sports, at least at one point. Now you are mostly following some esports. Would you ever consider casting any sports? I'm talking now sports, like traditional sports.
All sports?
Yeah.
I mean, Australian rules football. If they ever wanted me, I'd do it, but they never will. They have basically, the old boys club that people thought existed in StarCraft 2. It actually exists in football, and there's the same guys who've been commentators for like the last 30 years. You don't just break into that scene. So, and then there's, traditional sports usually have all their commentators are basically like ex-players and ex-professionals. So you can't really just be some armchair coach that jumps into it. Like you can that's one of the wonderful things about StarCraft and esports in general, is that you don't need to be a fit certain body type of intense amount of skill to be able to appreciate and be a part of the scene. You can compete no matter what your body size or whatever, no matter what your fitness is, you can compete. And you can be a part of the scene. All you need is, the right amount of passion and start to building up a bit of a contact base and putting in a lot of hard work. But as far as real sports goes, I wouldn't mind Aussie rules football, but I know it'll never happen. As far as esports goes, I wouldn't mind doing Rocket League. I like Rocket League a lot. Okay. I'm a closet Rocket League fan. I don't watch a ton of it, but I do when I can. There's a neat little scene for it in Australia that I follow from time to time. But generally, when I'm on the PC watching esports, it is primarily StarCraft. I don't really watch anything else except for maybe like Evo. I watch Evo and Awesome Games Done Quick. That's actually who I'd be. I would be more than happy to be like an announcer on AGDQ or SGDQ or something like that. I would love to be one of those people. So I love charity, and I also love the speedrunning scene. I think it's really cool.
Yeah, I find that also very fascinating. I think the last one was now recently. Yeah, that was again so exciting. So, as a proper Australian,
I like to think I am one.
Yes. Have you ever been bitten by spiders or snakes?
Yep. Yeah.
Seriously?
Not snakes, but I've been bitten by spiders. Yes.
Oh man.
I actually have a story of I was living out of home, and then I was like living with my parents for about a week because I just anyway I was at my parents' place for about a week, and I woke up one morning with a big spider right here on my eye, like on my eyebrow right here.
Shit.
And I woke up like that, and I freaked out and jolted my head back, and that caused the spider to freak out and actually bit me on my eyebrow, like right there. Yeah. But it was just, but it wasn't poisonous. It was a huntsman. So
okay.
it pinched and hurt, but it didn't poison me. Thankfully, there are some spiders in Australia that if they bite you, you're a goner.
Yeah. No, I know. My one friend that lives in Australia, she tells stories like you. And I mean, then I look the stuff up on the internet because I think she's joking with me, but it's all true.
Oh, no, that's true. Yeah, there's a certain spider. Like I don't like to kill insects that are in the house. I usually like to throw them outside, Mm-hmm. But there are some insects that I will kill because my dog's not as smart as I am, and he'll go up to them or get bitten and that sort of thing. So if I see a white-tipped spider, I kill that and I throw it in the toilet and flush it down the toilet because that thing is if it bites you, whatever it bites rots off and dies. So if it bites your finger, you'll get necrosis, like the finger is dead.
Oh man, that's not nice.
If that thing bit me on my eyebrow, I'd have half my face missing.
That would be also that would be very impressive.
Slightly detrimental. It'd be impressive to be a esports commentator or a personality with half my face missing. It'd definitely be a first.
Yeah, for sure.
But anyway, so thankfully that's not the case.
Okay.
And I've had snakes in my backyard as well, but I've not been bitten by one, thankfully.
Yeah. Currently,
snakes freak me out the most.
Currently, I'm living in South Africa, so we also had some snake experiences. So. Yeah, that's not nice. But if you are prepared, in a way, I think if you are not prepared to encounter that type of animal, then it gets really interesting. But if you know about it, then yeah. Okay.
It's not too bad. I was just saying, where I live, it's not too bad because I don't live in the middle of nowhere. I live in a town, so.
Yeah, and Australia is huge, so. Any recommendations if you really want to come to Australia and visit? Where should you go?
I mean, a lot of people are going to go to Sydney because there's a lot to do and see in Sydney. There's like the Harbour Bridge, the Opera House. It's got a really good, food district, nice casino, a lot of venues to drink, eat at, hang out, theatre, that sort of thing. Regular city stuff.
Outside of Sydney.
But I would have to say, outside of Sydney, I'd give a little shout out to my home state of South Australia, because South Australia has world-class wine. And if you like wine, then you will love South Australia because it has vineyards as far as the eye can see when you go out into the when you go out into the country. It's I mean a lot of the wine that you'll pay $200 or $300 for, that only the most cultured will know to order overseas in Europe and in America. They will know to order certain brands for however many hundreds euros it costs there. Here, it's $20.
No.
You go to one of those places, you could get a bottle, you can get 6 bottles. You can go home and have all of that to yourself. And also because it's a great wine region, that means it's a great food region as well. Because people, you don't just drink wine, you drink wine with stuff. And that is usually food married up. So there's a lot of really great chefs here as well. Great restaurants. And also a couple really nice dive bars that I like that have sticky floors, but lovely metal, lovely people, friendly dudes in black with long hair, just like myself, with tattoos all over themselves, face tattoos, facial piercings, whatever. They're still friendlies. They're like big cuddly teddy bears. You can listen to anything you want to do. You can hang out, have a drink, have a beer, have a whiskey,
nice.
and play pool cheap. And there's a couple of those nice bars around here as well.
Sounds good.
Lots of really, I would say primarily for the regular goer of South Australia, though, it's just a really good spot to eat and drink.
Thank you for that. I think we all heard that.
My pleasure.
If we ever find a time and place, maybe I'm still trying to convince my wife to come visit Australia.
It's a long trip.
It's a long trip. It is, man.
So,
but yeah, Leigh, Maynard, thank you so much for this, and
pleasure, man.
You overwhelmed me with your tempo and passion, but in a good way.
I'm pleased to hear it. That's the goal. That's the goal. I mean, it's kind of good that you know when to stop, because if people just talk to me about casting and StarCraft, I'll be here all night. I got a lot to say about everything. So yeah.
And that's good. And I mean, I would be up for it, but I think to make it easier on our listeners and viewers.
Yeah, no one's going to sit through a 9-hour VOD of us talking about StarCraft. So.
Some maybe, but
some maybe, yeah.
So, any last shout-outs from your side to anybody? Any last thoughts from your side?
Shout-outs goes. Would really appreciate it if you guys follow me on Twitch. We really like that as well. It's kind of my bread and butter right now. Hope you enjoy the tournaments that I do. Please support the game. Please support the players. Don't be shy. Especially if you go to an event as well. Go to events. People really love to see bums on seats and those shots of the crowds. Go to your local live events, or even if it's not local, and it's and it makes sense to go on that trip. Please go to those events, because your favorite player or favorite commentator is waiting for you to come to them. Like you think that you're being a bother, but you're not. We actually love meeting new people. Provided that you don't see us like crying or something like, or trying to take a sip from a hip flask because we can't handle it. Maybe leave us alone if we're doing that. But if we're not, come and say hello. We're very, very sweet, and the players are as well. Players love having people come to them and ask for signatures, and that's the thing. So I guess my shout out is just to the StarCraft 2 scene in general. Just support it, because if you love it, it'll love you back.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you for doing this interview, and maybe see you another time.
I hope so. Take it easy.